Nobody told you. That is the thing that surprises people most when I explain what the research on exceptional aging actually looks like. Nobody pulled them aside at 73 or 76 or 79 and said, what you are doing, the specific, quiet, unremarkable things you have been doing every day without applause or instruction is exactly what the science of longevity has been trying to identify, document, and teach. They just kept doing the things. The morning walk, nobody scheduled for them. The vegetable they eat because they genuinely like the taste of it. The grandchild's question they took seriously enough to look up the answer. The night they slept 8 hours because they decided sleep was not something to negotiate with. The doctor's appointment where they asked 3 questions instead of nodding and leaving. The friend they called, not because they needed anything, but because they thought of them and picked up the phone. None of these feel like health interventions. Every one of them appears in the research on exceptional aging. And if you are over 70 and you recognize yourself in the 7 signs I'm about to describe, I want you to hear something directly from me before we begin. You are not just aging. You are aging better than the majority of people in your age bracket, according to the same biomarkers, cognitive assessments, functional metrics, and behavioral profiles that the world's leading research institutions on aging have been studying for decades. That deserves to be named. I am Dr. Berg, and today, for once, this video is going to tell you what you are doing right. Stay with me. Drop 2 things in the comments right now: your age and the city and state where you are watching from. Because this community is being built one person at a time in Birmingham, Alabama, in Houston, Texas, in Memphis, Tennessee, in Jacksonville, Florida, in every home where a senior over 70 is waking up every morning and doing things that the aging research would categorize as exceptional without anyone having told them so. Drop your age and your location right now. And if you are currently over 70, type your exact age in the comments, because the comment section of this video is going to become something worth reading. A community of people over 70 who kept going and who are about to find out exactly what the science says that means. Hit subscribe right now to help this community grow. The next senior over 70 who has been wondering whether the effort they are still putting in is making a difference deserves to find this channel and get their answer. Now, something important about how aging is measured versus how aging is talked about. In clinical research, exceptional aging is defined not by the absence of disease, but by the preservation of specific functional, cognitive, biological, and behavioral markers beyond what statistical models predict for a given age group. The research distinguishes between chronological age, the number of years since birth, and biological age, the functional state of organ systems, cognitive performance, physical capacity, and inflammatory markers relative to population norms. Adults who score as biologically younger than their chronological age on validated assessment tools are what the longevity literature calls exceptional agers. The characteristics that define exceptional agers are not mysteries. They have been documented in decades of longitudinal research, from the MacArthur study on successful aging, to the Harvard study of adult development, to the centenarian studies of Okinawa, Sardinia, and Loma Linda, California. And the characteristics are specific, observable, and, as this video is about to show, recognizable in the daily life of a significant proportion of the seniors watching this right now. Hit like if you think every senior over 70 deserves to know what the research says about whether they are aging exceptionally. The 7 signs. Sign number 1, you wake up with something in mind. Not obligation, not anxiety, not the weight of what needs to be managed, something you are genuinely looking forward to, or something you are genuinely working toward. a garden that needs attention this morning, a conversation you want to have with someone, a problem you fell asleep thinking about and woke up with a new angle on, a book you want to get back to, a grandchild you are planning to call. The longevity research has a technical term for this state, eudaimonic well-being. The sense of purposive engagement, of having a reason to show up for the day, that exceeds the simple management of biological continuity. A 2019 study published in JAMA Network Open followed 6,985 adults over a mean of nearly 5 years and found that a high sense of purpose in life was associated with a 35% lower risk of all-cause mortality, an effect size larger than that of regular physical exercise in the same study population. 35% lower mortality risk from waking up with something in mind. But the mechanism is not merely psychological. Purpose-driven adults show lower circulating levels of interleukin-6 and C-reactive protein, the inflammatory markers established across this series as drivers of cardiovascular disease, cognitive decline, and biological aging. The purposive orientation literally reduces the inflammatory load of daily life at the biochemical level. If you are over 70 and you wake up most mornings with something pulling you toward the day rather than something pushing you through it, the research says you are doing something that extends life, maintains organ function, and reduces the inflammatory biology of aging simultaneously. That is not a minor thing. That is the single behavioral marker most consistently associated with exceptional aging outcomes in the longitudinal literature. Sign number 2, your balance is still solid. You do not think about balance. That is the sign. When you step off a curb, reach for something on a shelf above your head, turn quickly in response to a sound, or step across an uneven surface, you do not stop and plan the movement. Your body handles it. This automatic postural control, the reflexive, unconscious management of the body's center of mass relative to its base of support, is one of the most sensitive biomarkers of overall neurological and musculoskeletal health available. It is not just a fall prevention variable. It is a proxy for the health of the vestibular system, the proprioceptive pathways in the joints and muscles, the cerebellar processing circuits, and the neuromuscular connectivity that together constitute the nervous system's capacity to govern the physical body. A 2020 study published in JAMA Internal Medicine followed adults over 70 for 8 years and found that single leg stance time, the ability to stand on one foot with eyes open for at least 10 seconds, was one of the strongest predictors of 10-year survival, with each additional second of stance time associated with measurably lower all-cause mortality risk. The test that predicts survival over the next decade is whether you can stand on one leg for 10 seconds. If you can, and particularly if you do not have to think about it, your neuromuscular system is functioning at a level that the majority of adults your age cannot match. Try it now if you are reading this in a safe environment. Stand near a wall or a piece of furniture for safety. Lift one foot. See how long you hold it without reaching for support. The adults who hold it past 30 seconds at 75 are in the top 10% of functional neurological health for their age group. Sign number 3, you still sleep and wake on a consistent schedule. Not perfectly, not rigidly, but within approximately the same hour, most nights going to sleep, most mornings waking, without needing an alarm, without lying awake for hours, without the cycle of late nights and recovery mornings that characterize disrupted sleep architecture. The consistency of sleep timing is the external signature of a well-functioning circadian clock, the internal biological timekeeper that governs not just sleep, but the daily timing of cortisol release, immune function, metabolic regulation, and cellular repair. The circadian clock degrades with age. Its degradation is associated with increased cardiovascular disease risk, accelerated cognitive decline, and reduced immune surveillance. The maintenance of a consistent sleep-wake rhythm even without exceptional sleep quality at every night, is one of the most reliable indicators that the master clock is still running efficiently. A 2020 study published in Science Advances examined circadian rhythm regularity in adults across age groups and found that high circadian regularity in adults over 70 was independently associated with better cognitive function, lower inflammatory markers, and significantly lower risk of cardiovascular events, even after controlling for sleep duration and quality. The rhythm itself, independent of the individual night, is what the aging research identifies as protective. If you are someone who goes to bed and wakes within roughly the same hour most days without pharmaceutical assistance and without feeling like you are fighting your own biology to maintain it, your circadian clock is functioning with the regularity that the research associates with the slowest rates of biological aging. Sign number 4, you eat real food and it is mostly plants. Not a diet, not a regimented program, not a protocol, just the way you have always eaten, which happens to look, when assessed against the nutritional epidemiology of longevity populations, like the dietary pattern associated with the longest, healthiest lives. Mostly vegetables, some fruit, legumes with some regularity, protein from fish, eggs, or modest amounts of meat, olive oil more often than butter, very little that comes from a package with more than 5 ingredients, not because you read a book about it, because this is simply what food looks like to you, what you grew up with, what tastes right, what feels satisfying. A 2021 study published in JAMA Internal Medicine followed 119,000 adults over 36 years and found that higher adherence to a dietary pattern characterized by whole plant foods, seafood, and minimal processed food was associated with a 25% reduction in all-cause premature mortality compared to the lowest adherence group. 25% mortality reduction from eating the way you have always eaten. The adults in the blue zone populations who live longest, the Okinawans, the Sardinians, the Nicoyans of Costa Rica, do not eat this way because they were told to. They eat this way because it is the food of their culture, their kitchens, their daily routine. It does not feel like discipline because it was never framed as sacrifice. If eating real food, cooking regularly, and finding genuine satisfaction in a bowl of something simple and nourishing is simply the texture of your daily life rather than an achievement of willpower, the longevity research says this is one of the most powerful things a person can do. And you have been doing it without calling it anything. Sign number 5, your mind still reaches for new things. Not the puzzle you have done 1,000 times. Not the television show you watch because the time needs filling. Something that requires your brain to build a pathway it does not already have. A new language attempted at 74. An online class at 77 that made you feel stupid for the first 3 weeks before something clicked. A grandchild's interest that you decided to actually understand. The music they listen to, the technology they use, the world they are growing into, rather than nod past it. A book that required 3 attempts before it gave way and let you in. The discomfort of genuine novelty, the specific feeling of not yet knowing, of being in the beginner's position, of slow and imperfect progress is the signature biological signal that new neural pathways are being constructed. A 2021 study from the Harvard Aging Brain Study found that adults over 75 who regularly engaged in novel skill acquisition showed significantly greater cognitive reserve on neuroimaging, significantly slower hippocampal volume decline, the hippocampus being the primary memory formation center, and significantly better performance on executive function assessments over a 5-year follow-up period, compared to adults who engage primarily in familiar, well-practiced activities. Familiar activities maintain what already exists. Novel learning builds new architecture. If you are over 70 and you are still willing to be a beginner, still willing to be confused, still willing to feel slow, still willing to not know yet, you are doing the one thing that the neuroscience of aging identifies as the most effective single behavioral strategy for preserving the cognitive function you will be most grateful for at 85. Sign number 6. You have people who would notice if they did not hear from you. Not followers, not contacts, not the broad social surface that modern connectivity makes easy to maintain and hollow. People who know you well enough to notice your absence. People whose lives include you in a way that produces genuine concern when they do not hear from you for an unusual length of time. People with whom you have had the same argument twice and the same laugh 100 times. 2 or 3 of these relationships, possibly fewer, is what the research defines as adequate social connection for protective longevity benefit. The number is not large. The depth is what matters. A 2022 meta-analysis published in the Journals of Gerontology analyzed data from 148 longitudinal studies involving more than 300,000 participants and found that adequate social relationships, not social activity, but genuine mutual investment in close relationships, were associated with a 50% increased likelihood of survival compared to social isolation, an effect size comparable to quitting smoking. Social isolation kills at the same rate as smoking. Close relationships protect at the same magnitude. If you are over 70 and you can name right now 2 or 3 people who genuinely know you, not just know of you, and who would make a phone call if they had not heard from you in a week, you have the social infrastructure that the research identifies as among the most powerful longevity factors available. Most people cannot name 2 or 3 such people by age 75. You can. That is exceptional. Sign number 7, you take your health seriously without being afraid of it. This is the most subtle sign on the list, and the one that most clearly distinguishes exceptional agers from both the neglectful and the anxious. You go to the appointments. You take the medications that have been reviewed and confirmed. You ask the questions, the 3 questions from the surgical video, the medication review from the 5 prescriptions video, the blood test request from the vitamins video. You have a physician you trust, and the conversations you have with them are substantive. And then you go home and live your life without the appointments becoming the organizing principle of your days. You are not managing your health from fear. You are not avoiding it out of neglect. You are relating to it with the same practical engagement that you bring to everything else that matters to you. Attentive, informed, and then released to live rather than to monitor. A 2019 study published in the Journals of Gerontology found that adults over 70 with high health engagement, defined as active participation in health decision-making, regular preventive care, and medication adherence, combined with low health anxiety, defined as the absence of rumination, medical hypochondria, or health preoccupation beyond appropriate vigilance, had significantly better physical and cognitive outcomes at 5-year follow-up compared to adults who were either disengaged or hypervigilant about their health. Engaged without being afraid, informed without being consumed. If you are someone who takes your health seriously enough to watch a channel like this, to learn, to question, to bring the 5 questions to the surgical consultation, and who also closes the laptop and goes for the walk and calls the friend and makes the dinner without letting the health conversation become the only conversation, you are relating to your aging body with exactly the orientation the research identifies as protective. 7 signs. You wake up with something in mind, the 35% mortality reduction from purposive engagement. You do not think about your balance, the neuromuscular proxy for vestibular, proprioceptive, and cerebellar health that 10-second single leg stance predicts 10-year survival. You sleep and wake on a consistent rhythm, the circadian regularity that independently predicts cognitive function and cardiovascular health beyond any single night's quality. You eat real food mostly from plants. The 25% premature mortality reduction from the 119,000 person longitudinal study. Your mind still reaches for new things. The hippocampal volume preservation and cognitive reserve documented in Harvard's 5-year neuroimaging follow-up. You have people who would notice the 50% survival advantage of close social relationships in the 300,000 person meta-analysis. And you take your health seriously without being afraid of it. The engaged but not anxious orientation the research associates with the best long-term outcomes. None of these appeared on any prescription pad. None of them required a clinical intervention. All of them are things you have been doing quietly, consistently, without applause in the decades that brought you here. Hit subscribe right now if you believe every senior over 70 deserves to hear clearly and specifically what the research says about the choices they have been making and what those choices mean for the life ahead. Only the people who are completely comfortable with the aging research being kept in academic journals rather than delivered to the people it describes will scroll past without engaging. Everyone else, subscribe, like, and share this video. The one sign you should add if it is missing. If one sign is missing, here is where to start. Not every viewer of this video will see all 7 signs in their current daily life. Perhaps the purposive morning pull has dimmed since retirement. Perhaps the sleep rhythm has become irregular since a health event or a life disruption. Perhaps the social connections have narrowed since a loss that has not yet been fully rebuilt around. The research on where to start when rebuilding is consistent. Start with the body. Consistent daily movement, even 10 minutes of the morning walk protocol from the longevity video, restores circadian rhythm, improves sleep quality, reduces inflammatory markers, and creates the physical confidence that rebuilds social willingness and cognitive engagement. The body is the most accessible lever because it responds to the simplest inputs the fastest. A 2021 study published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine found that adults over 70 who began a consistent daily movement practice, even at low intensity, even for short duration, showed measurable improvements in sleep quality, cognitive performance, and self-reported mood and purpose within 6 weeks. 6 weeks from a 10-minute morning walk. If one of the 7 signs is missing, begin with 10 minutes outside tomorrow morning. The rest tends to follow. Nobody told you. You have been waking up with something in mind, standing without thinking about it, sleeping and waking within the same hour most mornings, eating the way you have always eaten, learning things that made you feel stupid first, calling the people who know you, and showing up to every appointment without letting the appointments become everything. And nobody has sat down across from you and told you what the research says that means. So let me do it now. The MacArthur Foundation study on successful aging, the Harvard study of adult development, the centenarian research from Okinawa, Sardinia, and Loma Linda, decades of longitudinal data on what separates the adults who reach 80 and 85 and 90 with their function, their minds, their relationships, and their joy intact from those who reach the same calendar age in a different condition. The research says you. The research says the specific collection of quiet daily choices this video just named. None of them dramatic, none of them medically prescribed, none of them requiring any intervention beyond the decision to keep going, are the behavioral signature of exceptional aging. You have been doing the research without knowing you were the subject. Hit subscribe because this channel is going to keep telling you what the science says about the choices you have been making specifically, accurately, and without the deficit framing that most conversations about aging in America default to. Hit like because every engagement pushes this to one more senior over 70 who has been wondering whether the effort they are still putting in is making a difference and has never had anyone sit down and say, yes, measurably, consistently, according to decades of research across 3 continents. Yes. And share this video right now. Share it with the person in Birmingham who is 74 and still walks every morning before the neighborhood wakes up and dismisses it as just a habit and has no idea that habit is in the top behavioral predictors of 10-year survival in their age group. With the woman in Jacksonville who is 78 and still calls her 2 closest friends every week without fail and sees this as simply being a decent person, without knowing that those 2 relationships provide the same mortality protection as quitting smoking 40 years ago would have. With the man in Houston who is 76 and is currently learning to use video editing software because his grandson showed him how, and he decided to actually understand it, who feels slightly embarrassed about being a beginner at 76 and does not know that the discomfort of being a beginner is the exact neurological signal the Harvard brain study would look for on an imaging scan. Tell them, the research has a name for what they are doing. Tell them, it is called exceptional aging. Tell them, they qualify. I am Dr. Eric Berg. You are not just aging. You are doing it better than most. The research agrees. Keep going. I will see you in the next one.